What if the fate of the entire universe hinged on one goddess's decision to pick the winning side in the ultimate family feud? In the shadowy depths of ancient Greek mythology lies a story that changed everything. The tale of how Styx, the primordial river goddess, became the kingmaker who secured Zeus's throne and transformed the cosmic order forever. Long before the marble columns of the Parthenon reached toward the sky, long before Homer sang his epic tales, the ancient Greeks understood that their world was born from chaos and shaped by divine conflict. They believed that before humans walked the earth, immortal beings waged wars that shook the very foundations of reality. These weren't mere stories. They were explanations for the forces that governed their lives, the oaths that bound their society, and the justice that ruled their world. In the beginning, when the world was young and wild, the Titans ruled supreme. These primordial deities, born from the union of Gaia the earth and Uranus the sky, commanded forces beyond human comprehension. Among them stood Oceanus, the great river that encircled the world, and his daughter Styx, a goddess whose very name would come to represent the most binding oaths in existence. Styx wasn't just any river deity. She embodied the dark, mysterious waters that flowed between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Her river formed one of the 5 waterways of the underworld, carrying souls to their eternal rest. The Greeks believed her waters possessed supernatural power. They could preserve the dead, test the truth of oaths, and even grant near invincibility to mortals brave enough to bathe in them. But Styx's greatest moment wouldn't come in the shadowy underworld. It would arrive when the cosmos itself hung in the balance, when son rose against father in the most epic rebellion ever conceived. Cronus, king of the Titans, had devoured his children to prevent a prophecy that foretold his overthrow. But his wife Rhea saved their youngest son Zeus, spiriting him away to grow strong in secret. When Zeus reached maturity, he returned with a plan as audacious as it was dangerous. He would challenge his father's reign and liberate his swallowed siblings. The stage was set for the Titanomachy, a war that would rage for 10 brutal years and reshape the divine hierarchy forever. On one side stood Cronus and most of the mighty Titans, wielding the power they'd held since time immemorial. On the other stood Zeus and his freed siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, young gods with everything to prove and nothing to lose. The early years of the war brought stalemate. Both sides possessed immense power, hurling mountains like stones and splitting the earth with their battles. Thunder crashed endlessly as Zeus wielded his lightning bolts. Poseidon's earthquakes shook the foundations of the world. The very fabric of reality trembled under the assault of divine fury. But Zeus understood something his father didn't. Victory wouldn't come through raw power alone. It would require strategy, alliances, and the wisdom to recognize potential allies wherever they might be found. While Cronus relied on traditional Titan loyalty, Zeus looked beyond conventional boundaries for support. This is where Styx enters our tale, and her decision would prove more crucial than any lightning bolt or earthquake. The river goddess faced an impossible choice. Her father, Oceanus, remained neutral in the conflict, as did most of her Titan relatives. Supporting the established order meant backing Cronus and the familiar world she'd always known. But something about Zeus's cause called to her. Perhaps Styx recognized justice in Zeus's rebellion against a father who devoured his own children. Perhaps she sensed the winds of change and chose to align herself with the future rather than the past. Or perhaps she simply believed that the young god's vision of a new cosmic order offered something better than Cronus's tyrannical rule. Whatever her motivation, Styx made a decision that would echo through eternity. She became the first of the older generation to openly support Zeus, bringing not just her own considerable power, but also her 4 children, Nike, the goddess of victory, Kratos, the personification of strength, Bia, the embodiment of force, and Zeus, the spirit of rivalry and competition. This wasn't merely symbolic support. Nike's presence on Zeus's side literally brought victory closer to his cause. Kratos and Bia provided the raw power needed to match the Titans' strength. Zeus ensured that Zeus's forces would never lack the competitive drive to push forward against overwhelming odds. But Styx's support meant something even more profound. In a world where oaths were sacred and breaking one's word could bring divine retribution, her public backing of Zeus sent a message throughout the cosmos. If the goddess whose very essence represented unbreakable promises believed in Zeus's cause, perhaps other divine beings should reconsider their positions. The tide of war began to shift. Inspired by Styx's example, other powerful beings joined Zeus's rebellion. The 100-handed Hecatonchires, freed from their prison in Tartarus, brought their overwhelming might to bear against the Titans. The Cyclopes, also liberated by Zeus, forged the legendary weapons that would define the Olympian gods, Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helmet of invisibility. As the final battle approached, Zeus's strategic brilliance became clear. He hadn't just gathered allies, he'd assembled a coalition that represented the future of divine power. While Cronus clung to the old ways, Zeus embraced change, innovation, and the radical idea that merit might matter more than birthright. The climactic confrontation shook the pillars of heaven and earth. Lightning split the sky as Zeus unleashed his full power. The Hecatonchires hurled boulders the size of mountains. The very air burned with divine energy as two cosmic orders clashed for supremacy. When the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, Zeus stood victorious. Cronus and his supporters found themselves banished to Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld. A new age had dawned, with Zeus as king of the gods and ruler of the cosmos. But Zeus didn't forget those who had supported him when victory seemed impossible. In recognition of Styx's crucial early support, he granted her honors that would last for all eternity. Her river became the ultimate test of divine truthfulness. When gods needed to swear their most binding oaths, they swore by the waters of Styx. Breaking such an oath brought terrible punishment, even for immortal deities. Moreover, Zeus welcomed Styx's children into his inner circle. Nike became his constant companion, ensuring that victory would always favor his cause. Kratos and Bia served as his enforcers, ready to carry out his will with unwavering strength and force. These weren't just ceremonial positions, they were real power sharing with one of his earliest and most important allies. The story of Styx and Zeus reveals profound truths about loyalty, timing, and the courage to support what's right, even when the outcome remains uncertain. Styx didn't wait to see who would win before choosing sides. She evaluated the merits of each cause and made her decision based on principle rather than convenience. This theme resonates powerfully in our modern world. How often do we face moments when we must choose between the familiar and the just, between playing it safe and standing up for what we believe is right? Styx's example reminds us that sometimes the most important decisions are the ones we make before we know how the story will end. The Greeks understood that oaths and promises formed the foundation of civilized society. Without trust, without the confidence that agreements will be honored, communities collapse into chaos. By making Styx's river the ultimate guarantor of divine promises, they elevated the concept of keeping one's word to cosmic significance. Even today, we use the phrase crossing the Styx to represent a journey from which there's no return, and we speak of Stygian darkness to describe the deepest, most impenetrable gloom. These linguistic echoes remind us that the ancient story of a river goddess who chose wisely continues to shape how we understand commitment, loyalty, and the power of decisive action. Styx's tale also illustrates the Greek belief that the universe operates on principles of justice and reciprocity. Zeus's victory wasn't just about superior firepower. It represented the triumph of a more just cosmic order over tyrannical rule. By rewarding those who supported him and honoring the promises he made, Zeus established himself not merely as a conqueror, but as a legitimate ruler worthy of respect. The story of Styx supporting Zeus ultimately teaches us that history remembers those who have the courage to stand up for justice, even when the odds seem impossible. Her decision to support the young god's rebellion transformed her from a minor river deity into one of the most important figures in the Greek pantheon, showing us that sometimes taking a stand for what's right can elevate us far beyond what we ever imagined possible.